And now let's meet our third and final honoree, Jesus Ajuayas, founder of a group called Aid for Life. Jesus is himself an immigrant from Venezuela, the country from which the biggest number of recent asylum seekers has been coming. Jesus, congratulations on being a Lehrer Prize honoree, and welcome to WNYC.
Hey, Brian, no, what an honor. I'm super honored and humbled to be here. I came to New York late 80s, and I came to visit a friend who was a member of ACT UP New York. And as a Venezuelan immigrant myself at the time, speaking zero English, I was in the hallways of the ACT UP meetings, and I became an AIDS activist. So that changed my perspective of community organizing and activism. That took me to 1996. I started an organization called Aid for AIDS, securing HIV medications to immigrants outside the U.S. and medicines for low and middle income countries, and became a really large program. And back in the 90s, we started supporting the asylum seekers coming to New York City, searching for health. That's from 1996 to the year 2000. We supported over 1,000 asylum seekers who were applying for asylum based on sexual orientation and HIV status. So we did work with asylum seekers back then. And in 2017, moving forward, we started helping Venezuelans who were leaving Venezuela, walking out of Venezuela through Colombia, going south. Venezuelans, they were called caminantes, the walkers, walking the longest distance, from Venezuela to Santiago, Chile. And so we expanded our services in South America, providing them humanitarian aid, and with a very focus of, access to medicine, access to HIV medicine, and so forth. So back to, that was June 2022. I learned that the Venezuelans were the number of asylum seekers crossing the south border, and those that were sent to New York City by Governor Abbott. And one of my team members called a church in the Lower East Side, St. Therese Church. And I wasn't even in New York when that happened. I was away for that weekend. And so we activated what we know what to do. So we knew that the first thing is we needed to know who they are, recognize them, right? It's like we hear, now you're in New York, we need to know who you are. So we started collecting clothes and shoes, as many New Yorkers did. But we learned from the get-go that we needed to start focusing on the integration process of these people. And what became something that we didn't know how long that was going to take is almost 2 years into these services. So we have Saturdays, we call it jornadas. We added the word jornadas into the New York Spanglish language. Jornada means in Spanish is a long event. There's actually no translation, so everybody's talking about
it's sort of like
jornadas.
a long work day, right?
Like a long event, and this is to support asylum seekers. So what we did is they go through an intake process where we learn who they are, where they come from, how big is the family, level of education, health question. So it would help us to connect them with services. Through those jornadas, they get clothes and shoes, and then very important, hot meals. We were able to secure some funding, and we actually buy food from a Lower East Side restaurant, and we give them rice and beans. The vast majority of the people that we serve represent Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, and some people from African nations. But the vast majority come from South America. So we realized that having hot meal like rice and bean, chicken, meat, it brings their dignity back. Yes. And after that, we started invited them to be part of the work. So from the get-go, asylum seekers became volunteers. And almost 2 years into it, we building community. And as a Venezuelan, which I never...
Very similar to what Nuala was telling us about the Jackson Heights Immigrant Center, working with the asylum seekers when they get a little bit of their feet on the ground, to start working to help people who are coming behind them. Just tell me, before we take a break and we bring you back with the other two honorees and we all kind of chat together, how much of a pre-existing Venezuelan community would you say there was in New York before 2022, and how much of one is there now?
Well, no, before 2022, I believe we were 30,000 in the tri-state area. And Venezuelans alone, I think there are almost 100,000 who arrived since July 2022, or since April 2022. So on part of the work that we have supported over 2,000 people applying for asylum, TPS. So we see the comprehensive approach, and the focus is these people to actually integrate in New York. These are the new New Yorkers and Venezuelans who have no host community. Now we're building it on steroids. And that's what we do, and that's what we continue to do.
And it's interesting about there being relatively few Venezuelans in New York before the surge. 30,000 is not that many, because typically I think immigrants
that's tri-state. That's Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. Not only New York City.
So really sparse. And now there's no going back, right? Once a community this big gets established, like has happened in New York throughout the city's history, with Dutch people and English people and Irish and Italian and Jewish and Dominican and other Caribbean, et cetera, all meaningful populations here now. Immigrants from those countries have reason to make this a destination. So now that has started with Venezuelans, right?
Yeah, and these people they just want to contribute. Venezuelans, when we look at the numbers, Venezuelans are the population that stay the least in the shelter system. And the entrepreneurs, the level of education is quite high, and the level of talent that they bring in, but not only Venezuelans, by the way, that's the vast majority of asylum seekers. I'm talking about Venezuelan because of the large number, but the asylum seekers are contributing, they want to contribute. And that's what we are so committed to make sure that they can have a prosperous life in New York City.
That's Jesus Aguayas, founder of Aid for Life, the third and final honoree on our 2024 Lehrer Prize for Community Wellbeing Awards program, with our theme for this year, Helping the Asylum Seekers. Jesus Aguayas, founder of the group Aid for Life. Congratulations again to all three of you. Let me go around the room and ask everybody, in brief, what's the hardest part of your work helping the asylum seekers?
Well, for me, it's the misinformation that asylum seekers go through. And I'm going to echo what Anuala mentioned. A lot of asylum seekers do not apply for asylum because they don't understand it. They don't understand the process. And one of the challenges for us is how do we break down that information? We do workshops every week. Twice a week, about 50 people go through our workshop where we break this down like for a fourth grader, and we increase the amount of people applying for asylum. And one of the challenges is the funding disparity. The funding goes to the large organizations, and it's like you start competing with the city or with other big groups that want the small groups out. That's a challenge for us. Power, you are an inspiration, man. I told you that once, and you represent what New York is all about. You have an incredible energy. Where do you get your energy? Because, I saw you there from day one at Port Authority. You still do that. And, you are somebody that we need to replicate. Where do you get that energy to be right there in Port Authority and give so much love the way you do? Right now, we in the Lower East Side, and on Avenue B and 7th Street is a ticketing center at the St. Regis Catholic School. It's a former Catholic school. There's a lot of West Africans, people from Senegal and from Mauritania. And we don't have enough West Africans volunteers, and not alone asylum seekers, but none of us speak, any of those African languages besides French, and it's not enough. So we're inviting, West Africans to come to Aid for Life and help us out. But the model for Latin Americans is happening, is strong, and I invite you to come see it.
What's the most common reason that your clients give for having left their country? And does it vary from country to country? How about for Venezuelans, Jesus?
Oh, they want to survive. They're looking for safety. They want to start a new life in a safe environment.
In your opinion, can the United States help solve the conditions in the home countries that will help end the demand to come here out of desperation? And if so, how? Jesus, could you start that one for Venezuela real briefly?
You gave me the hard one. I think I probably agree that the U.S. has done terrible things around the world, but not to Venezuela. The Venezuela was a dictator, and the dictator that is still there. The U.S. had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
It's a very difficult situation as it's organized crime who's running Venezuela. And when you have organized crime running a country, I don't know, it's a very hard one. I believe that another 7 million Venezuelans right now is close to 8 million Venezuelans outside Venezuela. If this year it should be an election year in Venezuela, I'm not hopeful at all. I think we're going to get another 7 million Venezuelans in the next 4 years.
And with that, listeners, we conclude.